back to your initial question, though, like,
Got a little status bar going.
Pulling up their hardwood floors or something like that, or pulling up the carpet like or like people like buying.
And you're good to go, Eileen.
All right, great. Hi, everyone. Brian, can you hear me there?
I guess that's kind of an example of how you can just keep building on top of building.
Yeah. Brian, are you online?
Looks like Rob is in the chat. I don't know if you guys can see the chat.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. My name is Eileen Shanahan, and we're presenting about EPA environmental education grants and projects with the Intertribal Council of Arizona. And we also have Brian Davidson here, who will be presenting about his experience managing environmental education grants and implementing those grants. And we'll both be giving suggestions and tips for those interested in applying and managing these grants. And just to confirm again, my co-presenter, Brian, can you speak to make sure we're able to hear you? If not, we can proceed, and I'll be presenting first, and Brian will then be taking it over. So today we're going to be chatting about logistics for applying for EPA environmental education grants and awards, and also resources to help meet educational goals and priorities for your tribes and organizations. And then Brian will be, again, chatting about his experience directly implementing these grants. So to start off, a bit about what environmental education is. So environmental education, also often called EE, increases awareness about environmental issues for people of all ages. Often it centers on children, but it also can include adults. And it goes beyond just information to include resources for improving critical thinking and learning about the environment. So this graphic gives a helpful explanation of what environmental education is. So again, it's more than just information. It does include awareness and knowledge, but it goes beyond to include critical thinking, problem solving, and decision-making skills, with the ultimate goal of inspiring action to protect the environment. So in EPA Region 9, our core environmental education programs include our grants and our youth and teacher award programs, which I'll speak more in detail about a little later on, as well as our outreach and education efforts. And we're really here to support organizations, local, state governments, and tribal agencies to help promote environmental education. So more about our environmental education grant program. Our application time period is actually open now, and it closes on December 6th. So we're currently accepting applications, and these grants provide financial support for projects that promote environmental education, again, for people of all ages, and it needs to have both that environmental priority and the educational priority. And I should mention that these slides are all in the platform for this conference on the page to join. And those are in a PDF, so you'll have access to all those links. And as well, we're going to be answering questions at the end, and we'll be sure to get all your questions answered. And you also will have my contact information and Brian's if questions come up, just as a heads up. But a note that the best way to find the most accurate information and a great resource is our request for application document, or RFA. And everything I'm saying today is based on this document. So just a note about that. So how can these grants support your tribal environmental education programs? So each year, each of the 10 EPA regions awards 3 to 4 grants. So in Region 9 this year, we'll be awarding 3 to 4 grants. And they range from $50,000 to $100,000. And you'll choose in that range how much your project will be. And the grant also requires that subawards are given. So you could receive financial support through this grant as a prime recipient or as a subaward for $5,000 or less. So you could be the prime recipient or you could partner with another organization. And who's eligible to apply? So local education agencies, state and tribal agencies, colleges and universities, nonprofits, and non-commercial educational broadcasting entities. So a wide variety, but definitely excited to encourage any of you that are interested to apply. And tribal folks are definitely eligible. So some ineligible activities of this grant would include technical training of environmental management professionals, environmental information or outreach projects that have no educational component. So like we mentioned before, it goes beyond just information. So like environmental journalism or just straight factual sharing does not qualify. It has to have that real educational component. Also, advocacy promoting a particular point of view is not eligible. Lobbying or political activities, non-educational research or development, or construction projects. Although I believe I'll get into this more later, but there can be a construction component if it's not the main focus. Like if you're building a nature trail that was educational, that could, with limitations, qualify. And I'm happy to answer more questions about that if they come up. Every year there's environmental and educational priorities for these grants. So this year the environmental priorities are addressing climate change and improving air quality, ensuring clean and safe water, cleaning up our communities and revitalizing land and preventing contamination. Then the educational priorities are community projects, career development, EE capacity building, and environmental justice. So there are some requirements of matching and subawards that are important to meet the eligibility requirements. So the matching funds is that a minimum of 25% of the total project budget must be provided by either the organization or additional grants. So for example, if your organization is requesting $90,000 from the EPA grant, the total budget would be $120,000, with $30,000 being provided by either your organization or additional grants. And additionally, a separate component is the subawards. So exactly 25% of EPA funds from this grant must go to subawards of $5,000 or less. So usually organizations give 5 subawards of $5,000. So an example would be if a organization is requesting $90,000, the total subawards would be exactly $22,000 and $22,500. So to help with that, it can get a little complicated. On the EPA website, we have our environmental education grant calculator, which will calculate these numbers for you. If you put the number, what you're requesting in the calculator, it'll break that down. So that's definitely very helpful, and there's a link to that on this slide, which you'll have access to. So again, we have our grant that is open currently. It just opened earlier in October, and there's a few new components to it. One being that there's a greater focus on serving underserved communities. And this includes communities of color and tribal and indigenous populations. So that's wonderful that that is a new focus. And there's some resources for helping identifying underserved communities to help in your grant application process to be able to communicate that and have some additional resources for how to include that in your application. And some tips for applying. Again, the request for application, or RFA, is really the best resource for you. It is very detailed, and it is important to read that thoroughly. There's also some great FAQ resources, which are again linked here. And making sure you're looking at the correct RFA. There is a different one for each of the 10 EPA regions. They are all the same, except there's a different contact person. So the Region 9 contact is myself, but making sure you're looking at that correct region. And starting early and leaving time to review and edit your application. It is a competitive grant. We do receive a high number of applicants. So really making sure you're meeting all those eligibility requirements. And again, using that grant calculator is very helpful. And organizing the application around the scoring criteria. So making sure you're meeting all the points listed in the RFA. Some more tips for applying. Organizing a work plan, so how you'll, what steps you'll be taking during your implementation of your grant, if it's awarded. So laying that plan out in the application. Also demonstrating how your project will benefit one or more underserved communities. Writing simply and clearly, and making sure it's very understandable, but also including those important details. Explaining acronyms and terms that folks might not be familiar with if they're outside your organization. Also not assuming that the reviewers of the grants are very knowledgeable about the subject that grant covers. Some final tips is, again, making sure that those match and sub-award requirements are accurate. And you aren't required to list your sub-award recipients in your application, but you should have a plan of how you are going to select those. If you do list the sub-award recipients in the application, making sure that they are eligible and meet those requirements. Including a plan to measure and evaluate the success of your grant project is important. And a really helpful way to prepare for applying for the grant is attending our upcoming environmental education grant webinars, which there are links in the slides to those, and I'll include a link in the chat box as well. And also reaching out to myself, the Region 9 Environmental Education Coordinator, or we have this address here, which is our headquarters contact. Just gonna take a sip of water. So if you're just interested in learning more about the environmental education grants but aren't ready to apply yet, a good way to gain familiarity with them, and also if you're just interested in learning more about grants, we have external and internal reviewers of the grants. So 3 people review each grant application, and it's a mix of EPA staff as well as members of the public who share their resumes and have some experience in the environmental field or education. And you can get kind of an inside look into what the application process is like and read applications and score them. So it's a great way to build a resume if you know of anyone looking to add something to a resume or learning more about the grant process. And you're welcome to contact me if you're interested in that. And these are a series of helpful links, including the upcoming webinar information and some additional resources that we've chatted about so far. We also have our EE Grant listserv, which will provide you all the upcoming updates and information about the environmental education grants. So that's very helpful, and definitely encourage you to join that if you're interested. Another helpful resource on the EPA website is a list of all the environmental education grants that have been funded by the EPA since 1992. And it provides a paragraph description of each grant. So if you're looking for information or inspiration for a project, this is a really great resource that could provide ideas or an understanding of past projects. So on to our environmental education awards programs. We have both our Youth Award, which is the President's Environmental Youth Award, and our Teacher Award, the Presidential Innovation Award for Environmental Educators, which that competition happens every year. And the application period is actually about to open in mid-November of this year and goes until February 2022. So our Youth Award, we also call it PEA, the President's Environmental Youth Award, recognizes environmental projects by kindergarten through 12th grade youth. And that is broken into 2 components. One is grades kindergarten through 5th, and then there's another award for grades 6 through 12. And it's a way that the EPA and the White House recognizes youth doing a variety of environmental projects to promote environmental protection and stewardship. So we have some really inspirational youth that have applied throughout the year. And if you know of any young people doing work to protect the environment, I definitely encourage you to share with them about this great opportunity. And our Teacher Award, also called the Presidential Innovation Award for Environmental Educators, or PIAEE, recognizes outstanding kindergarten through 12th grade teachers who are using environmental education as a context for learning in their classrooms and with their students. And there's a financial award for this, for the teachers of professional development for environmental education of $2,500 and an additional $2,500 to do environmental education projects with their students. And again, that application period will be opening in mid-November as well. So if you know of any inspiring teachers, please share that opportunity with them. And I'll now go into some resources that could help you meet your outreach and educational goals from some of our partners and some of EPA's environmental education resources. So the National Environmental Education Foundation, or NEEF, was established in 1990 as a nonprofit to complement the work of the EPA in environmental education. So they have a very helpful website that has a variety of curriculum and opportunities for nonprofits and local government and tribal organizations and agencies as well as award programs. So it's really a great kind of hub for all things environmental education. The North American Association for Environmental Education also has some wonderful resources. They are the current recipient of EPA's Environmental Education Teacher Training Grantee, and they provide really helpful trainings and workshops. Just last week, they held their annual conference, which is really a great gathering of environmental educators throughout North America. And they also have some wonderful environmental education certification programs. So NAAE, which we just talked about, they have state affiliates. So in Region 9, there's 3 state affiliates, organizations that are promoting environmental education specifically in those states. So there's one in Arizona, California, and Hawaii. And those organizations actually facilitate those certification programs and also have some wonderful curriculum and ideas for implementing environmental education. So this is a link to EPA's environmental education lesson plans, teacher guides, and a variety of online resources. And these are for ages kindergarten through 12th grade, ranging from environmental topics, everything EPA covers from air to water and everything in between. So some really helpful resources. One particular resource that I find especially helpful and interesting is EPA's Enviro Atlas, which provides a variety of lesson plans and training and tutorials, as well as national data sets for teachers and communities to explore with students. So EPA's Air Quality Flag Program is also another great educational resource, which I'll actually be doing a presentation tomorrow at 11 a.m. specifically about EPA air quality environmental education resources. So how this program works is that you'll receive a set of flags that correspond with the colors of EPA's air quality index that you can raise on a flagpole or hang in a window and visualize the state of air quality in your area. And there's also a variety of curriculum and outreach materials, including outreach materials specific for tribal communities, posters and templates for resources. So that's a really helpful and interesting way to visualize air quality. EPA also has a variety of environmental education publications. If you're interested, you can order on this website or also contact me. Excuse me. These are some additional resources from some of our partner organizations. Sorry, I got a tickle. But those are really helpful as well for finding environmental education curriculum and outreach opportunities. Again, here are some more EPA links to our education-related pages on our website. And yeah, I want to thank you so much for joining today. And even after this presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. And now I'll be handing it over to Brian from the Intertribal Council of Arizona. So, thank you. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Well, happy, what does it say? Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see here. All right. Can everybody see my PowerPoint? Great. Good, because all I can see right now is my presentation. I cannot see you all, but that's okay. When I go back to when I finish this and everything, we'll be able to see me again. I'll be able to see me again. Hope my hair's okay. Anyway, hello everybody. My name is Brian Davidson. I'm with the Intertribal Council of Arizona. We are a consortium of the 21 tribes here in Arizona. There's 22 tribes in Arizona. 21 of them are members of ITCA. The only member that is not, the only tribe that is not a member is the Navajo Nation. With that said, we still offer a lot of training, a lot of resources, and we have a very good relationship with their environmental team. So they've taken advantage of several of our trainings, several of our meetings. They're always welcome to the table. So environmental education grant. This was something that I was looking forward to applying for a number of years. I wasn't exactly sure what to do. I didn't have exact vision of what I would do or how I would execute it. But I looked at this grant for a number of years before I even applied. And for what it's worth, for the first year that I did apply for it, we didn't get it. We had to get it the following year. So that's a whole nother story. But anyway, the point being is that it's pretty competitive grants. And if you are really determined to get this grant, please keep applying and talk to your the panel that does the judging on it, see what score you received. And if you didn't get the score that you wanted, for the next cycle, make those corrections if you feel it is a good grant. So let me go to what we did and who our partners are. As Eileen had mentioned, you have to make sure that these are benefit more than one tribe. So there was a couple of different parties that are interested that took part in this, and you all have to act together and make it one big concert. We wrote this grant entitled Tribal Voices for Environmental Stewardship. We were the main applicant, the Intertribal Council of Arizona. We partnered with the University of Arizona, and we initially partnered with 5 tribes. Now, I'm going to go back to this, but when we first wrote this grant, we wrote it in, I think first it was 2018. We got the grant in 2019. And then we all know what hit in late winter, early spring 2020. I will get to that in a second. Introduction. Who are we? The Intertribal Council of Arizona. For those of you who are attending, don't know much about us, this is us. This is our building. This is our mission statement: to provide its member tribes with a united voice and the means for united action on matters that affect them collectively or individually. So we were pretty well established. We're in this old historic building right in the middle of Central Phoenix, and it's a cute little building. It's like I said, it's historic. It's right across from the Herd Museum. The building was once upon a time a buried gold medal for President headquarters.
Brian, sorry to interrupt. It looks like your slides aren't advancing. It's still at the first.
Oh
slide.
no. Okay, hang on. Let's see here. Let me stop sharing. Let me go back to this. Thank you for letting me know. Share screen. Windows. Oh no, okay, something happened here. Thank you for stopping me. Okay. Came up again. I closed it out. I'm reopening it. Share screen. Windows. Share. Now can you see it?
We can see the first slide that is still at PowerPoint, but if you press...
Okay, let me start from the beginning. Now can you see it?
No, it's still at that first slide, but can you go to the second slide or?
Yeah, try that.
Yeah, it's still just showing the first. That's odd.
Hang on. Do you have it? Can you pull it up for me?
I do, yeah.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and I'll stop sharing and I'll just talk for a little bit.
Okay.
And I'll just tell you when to advance.
Okay.
Sorry about that. And there it is.
Okay, perfect. And you can see that.
Yep, there you go. Go ahead and go from the beginning.
Okay.
Okay. Advance. One more. And another one. There we go. Okay, there's our old building here. Once again, I was I think, picking up where I left off. We were Barry Goldwater for headquarters building back in, gosh, what, 1963 or so. And if you haven't come visit our place when we are open, please do. We've been working from home for well over a year now, and so but you know, we can go in the event we request to come on in. Next slide. Here's members of ITCA. I think what kind of separates us from a lot of different tribal consortiums is that we do have a board of directors, and that board is comprised of the different tribal chairs, presidents, heads, and they make decisions, governors, they make decisions that directly represent Indian country. And so we have well over 30 projects, well over 70 full-time staff. I'm getting a little bit of background feed, so if you're not on mute, please put yourself on mute. There you go. Thank you very much. So that's us. You can go ahead and go back to the PowerPoint, the slide presentation. There we go. Okay. And that's just a handful of us. I think we've grown since that picture of another 20 full-time employees. Next slide. Like I said, we wrote the grant in 2018 with different values in mind. Be inclusive of the youth, the teachers, and the elders. We wanted to learn through discussion. There was a slide that Eileen had shared in sort of the process of when you consider this grant. These are the different components you want to consider. So we took the values of tribe, and then we wrote it down, and we wanted for this lesson to be learned through discussion, through critical thinking, through self-realization. If you had been to a college course, probably a little bit higher, especially like an English course, what you'll do is you'll sit and you'll read like possibly a novel, and then everybody will discuss the novel. And then you sort of realize certain things, certain issues as you discuss it, and it's like a self-realization type of process. This is what we kind of wanted, and the method which we wanted to do it. So in addition to that, we wanted to take a look at what one tribe's priorities are may not necessarily be for the other tribe. So we wanted to learn from each tribe individually. Go ahead, next slide. Okay, so how we worked it is that ITCA would write the grants, we would help manage the grants, but the University of Arizona, the Southwest Environmental Health Sciences Center would be conducting and engaging with the tribes. Some of you may have known Marty Lindsay. She just recently retired. Now it's a gentleman by the name of Ben Richmond, who's interimly sort of taken over a lot of the projects on over there. Next slide. Original projects. One is to promote community and student environmental stewardship through culturally relevant activities. The goal number 2 was to develop environmental literacy among 5 tribal communities that encourages youth to pursue environmental education and careers. Next slide. How will this be done? We wanted to really convey to the EPA that we would have to set a certain metrics to say that this is how it's completed. I think having metrics, if you can, does help the panel, the reviewers, to say, hey, this is how many people will learn from this project. This is how many people will be involved. These are all the parties. And when you do your reporting, it does help to see if you have reached those types of goals. So I won't go through them, all of them, but obviously 35 teachers, 100 environmental professionals, and some of these others that we mentioned here, 100 tribal high schools and middle school students, and so on. Next slide, please. How it will be done. Once again, these are the same metrics that I discussed earlier. I know that I only have about 12 minutes left here, so we're gonna go a little bit faster. Go ahead. Next slide. We had all this planned, all this set up. We started to execute our grant in October 2019. Got the planning done. We were engaged with these tribes. We put out, we started, we wrote a contract with all 5 tribes, showed the U of A. They all considered it, went through a legal review, and then bam, this came. January, we sent out the contracts, and then there is this rumors about this virus that was going all across the world, starting to grow. What do we do? All of a sudden, everything gets postponed. Everything gets prioritized. An environmental education grant was no longer something that was of interest. Next slide. So many questions. How are we going to able to execute this grant? How can we engage with tribes? Schools were shutting down. How do you execute an environmental education plan, much less an education plan? Next slide. So first thing we knew we had to do was communicate with our project officer. We had to let them know, to say, hey, this is what's going on. Nobody's meeting in person anymore in the spring. I don't know how we're going to do this. Let's all be a little bit flexible. People were learning from virtually, and this was starting to be Zoom fatigue is a real thing. Next slide, please. So ITCA submitted extension letters, and we asked for a 12-month extension, and that the ITCA and U of A were to be able to work directly with the tribal schools, not necessarily with the tribes in their government offices. We can sort of cut some corners here. We're now able to learn through virtual tools because it did have in the contract that we would come there in person and do this, and that was no longer going to be a thing. And so basically, to make a long story short, we were going to have to be a little bit flexible, work with the original 5 tribes that we had outlined. And if some of them said, no way, we're not going to do this project anymore, then we could start going to some other tribes. We started engaging with those and still meet those numbers, those metrics that we said that we would meet. Next slide. With that, can we complete all these deliverables? We'll be able to do this. Next slide. Move to virtual once again. Talk to the teachers. Follow up with phone calls. The planning has pivoted quite a bit. This is how we're going to do this. This is how we're going to be able to teach students now. This is the new normal, as they say, at least for a little while, and see if everybody can actually accept, adapt, and learn. Next slide, please. So this was one of the lessons we had. The Tohono O'odham Nation said that we will have this. We'll do a one day. It was probably only about, I wouldn't even say 3/4 of a day event. It went to like 1 o'clock. It was on a Saturday. We knew that students were fatigued as it is from learning on Zoom, but we had, what we tried to do to make it seem like an exciting event is that we had a different number of speakers speak that day. They made it fun. They made a lot of jokes. They talked about different stories, and we had a lineup of different areas in the environment that the Tohono O'odham Nation said this person would be a good person to speak. This is the way they can do it. And they don't need to speak for a whole hour. They can just speak for a half an hour or so. And figure out how to engage students in the discussion on Zoom. Next slide. So, when we had the events, usually we're there, we take pictures, but we're taking pictures of our Zoom now. Who are the teachers? Who are the students that came online, and document as much as needed to satisfy the reporting requirements for the grant. Next slide. Lessons learned. Wow. We probably couldn't have applied for this grant at a more challenging time. I would have to say much of this was figuring out how to work during a pandemic. And once the ball was rolling, sometimes we hit a hurdle, sometimes we hit a pitfall, and see what events were of value, what were the roadblocks in that past lesson that we had, and when we do another one, figure out what we can do different. Next slide. And advice. This is the advice I would give if you either write this grant or you are you were granted this, and you go from there. About 75, maybe closer to 80% of this is probably going to be in this section of planning. Start as soon as possible. If you get the grant, start your planning as soon as possible. If you're getting contracts, if you're getting consulting agreements, if you're getting the different parties together to orchestrate that concert that you're putting with all the different players moving in one direction, make sure that everybody understands what you're doing. Make sure they're excited about it. Talk to them about the different roadblocks that might be in the way, and just make sure that you have everything that you need to do in order to execute it. And if there's somebody or one of the parties is stalling, you'll need to gauge that, plan ahead, and you'll have to do some follow-up from time to time. Because as Eileen had articulated, it's going to be more than one party doing it. You have to give them incentive to be excited about it. Has set dates, set meetings. Do that as soon as possible. And even though your education might involve a number of parties, don't hesitate to make sure certain executive decisions are made. You don't have to get everybody's input for certain decisions. For other decisions, you obviously will. Next slide. Once you have your path, just keep going with it. If you got any questions about this and how we did it, please don't hesitate to give me a call or send me an email. And times are changing. We all have to be a little bit flexible, and I think a lot of people understand that. That's all I have, Eileen.
Great. Well, thank you, Brian. See, I'm looking at the chat now. I'm not seeing too many questions. But if folks do have any questions, we can stay on till 11. So if you type it in the chat box, we're happy to address that now.
Thank Eileen and Brian for the presentation, and also being versatile when there's a hiccup and you're able to, Eileen was able to share the screen and help Brian out. Yeah, if people just want to say thank you, anything, a comment, just something to know that you're out there and just kind of feel some kind of communal relationship, even though we're in this online world, I think they'll appreciate it. But yeah, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much for attending. And again, the slides are in the presentation description, so please use those as a resource. And if any questions come up, you're more than welcome to contact me or Brian.
There's my email address. There's my phone number. Please don't write it on any bathroom walls. Yeah. And thank you for attending. Thank you for listening. This is a challenging grant. It can be a wonderful grant if it's executed right. And if you decide to do it, good luck.
A comment from Russell. Just want to say thank you. Great presentation. Patricia, thank you for sharing. I really appreciate this presentation. Was the youth conference open to all youth? Was one
good
question?
Good question. It was for that tribe. How we have it planned is to for each tribe to host their own individual conferences. So how the grant was sort of set up is for each tribe to discuss their own issues. So if let's say the Tohono Nation said, I want to discuss illegal dumping because that is a big issue over here. Meanwhile, you know, the Pasquayaki says, we'd like to discuss water and the availability of water, and we feel that is the most important. So because of that, we have the conferences separate, the meetings. We will call them forums, really.
Cool. We also have a thank you from Melissa, and Donna said good jobs. Thank you. So we appreciate that. Again, we're not in person, so this helps, I think, everybody on both sides just to kind of reach out and show our appreciation for what work we're doing. And there's a little delay, but if anyone's another comment or question, we have about a minute left. Patricia said thank you as well. I think to the answer you gave about the conference.
Uh-huh. And if in the future, if you wanted to work with ITCA, if you have something in mind, please let us know, whether it's this grant or anything else in the future. If you have certain trainings, certain meetings, certain forums you'd like us to help facilitate, that's what we're here for.
And just a reminder to attendees, it'll be shortly after the conference, and not soon after. These presentations will be uploaded to the website, so you'll be able to come back, review it, find this information, and be able to connect with Eileen and Brian. I don't know, I think we're good. Anyone has a question, maybe we can squeeze it in, but I think sounds like there was a good presentation. And again, thank you, Eileen and Brian.
Yeah, thank you, David.
All right.
Thank you all for attending.
Thank you, David.
Okay, one last comment. Cindy said thank you for the presentation. Well, I think we'll go out on that note. So thank you, everybody.
All right.
Take
Have
care.
a good conference.